and welcome again, readers, to the second season of the Vidarbha Literary Festival, your friendly neighborhood and all-inclusive Lit Fest. So, we've been organizing this Lit Fest for quite a while. I've been promoting it as much as possible. The whole entire team is. So I remember talking about the fest, the theme, to a dear friend of mine, and I remember mentioning it to them, and I also remember talking to them about the theme in particular, about the term inclusion, wherein I asked them what inclusion means to them. The reply that I received was something that I have been pondering upon for quite a while now. They said, a truly inclusive time will be when isolation will only be a personal choice and won't ever be forced. I've been thinking about this for a very long time, wondering how on earth can you force isolation on people? But it exists. It exists in every sort of society. And just by the way, this statement was said to me at just after the Pride Parade, which most of us know is a myriad of colors, of joy, of a celebration, right? A simple look at the Pride colors will tell you it's enough that, all of our hearts are filled with joy and pride, right? It's accompanied with a hope of a happier time for our queer friends. I honestly want a really joyful and a very happy time for all of them ahead. But again, the question arises, it makes me wonder if their lives are actually that much happy. Do they really have those many colors of joy? We are lucky that we are in the midst of a personality which is about to give great insights on this subject. We have with us author Sharif Rangnekar, who has written the book Queer Sapien. He is a communications consultant, a curator focused on diversity, inclusion, music and arts, and also a singer and songwriter. With over 25 years of experience in the fields of media, publishing, research and public relations, he uses talks, writing, event curation and music to advocate change and garner support for the LGBTQIA+ community. His book, Straight to Normal, My Life as a Gay Man, released early in 2019. It is amongst the few queer memoirs of India and the first since the reading down of Section 377. The book has featured in best-selling lists and has been recognized by not just sections of the media, but by leaders from the fields of academics, politics, human rights, literature, and films. Sharif also conceptualized and edited Realizing Brand India, a book that mapped a changing perception of India on the global stage. He has held positions at the Economic Times and the Pioneer before leading Integral PR as its CEO and later as its chairman. Sharif contributes extensively to write for publications such as Hindustan Times, Scroll.in, The Hindu, The Wire.in, Galaxy Magazine, Huffington Post, and several others. In conversation with him today, we have the author Sindhu Rajasekaran. Sindhu Rajasekaran is an acclaimed Indian author and filmmaker who has co-founded an independent film production company, Camphor Cinema, and has produced critically acclaimed Indo-British feature film Ramanujan, based on the life and times of the mathematical prodigy, Srinivasa Ramanujan. Her debut novel, Kaleidoscopic Reflections, was longlisted for the Crossword Book Award in 2011. She has obtained the master's degree in English from the University of Edinburgh after completing her training as an electronics and telecommunications engineer at Anna University. She is the author of the book Smashing the Patriarchy, published in 2021. We are not strangers to uniquely, proficient authors. I'm sure that is the reason for my stammering and continued anxiety on the stage, but I won't take up more of your time. I'd ask our moderator for today to please escort the author on the stage and commence with the session.
I think it's okay now. Thank you so much for that introduction. So Sharif, let's start with you just telling us a little bit about how this book came about, when you started writing it, why you wrote it, and then we can go on with more questions.
Firstly, thanks for having me here, and it's lovely to be at this festival. It's hugely different from the festivals I've been to. There's a beauty in the informality, and that just makes you more comfortable in your skin and makes it more easy to to sort of have conversations with all kinds of people, and that's the lovely thing. Thanks. So about this book, I've been asked this question, and I was asked by a journalist and friend who also identifies as gay, Sandeep Roy, and he says, Sharif, it seems like you had so much more to say after the first book. But I did tell him that, we're in a democracy, and if you still get a chance to speak, keep speaking. And so this book actually, the proposal I'd sent my publisher is quite different from the book I wrote. So that doesn't mean there's another one coming. But you're a writer, so you know that sometimes as you start writing, you discover things on your own and you recall all kinds of stuff. So this book, I did feel for many years that there was so much to say. There's so much I'd watched and reflected on over the years. As a journalist, as a son, as a brother, as a lover, as a PR man, and all of that sort of came together in this book, and I just felt that as a society and having been part of the press, there's so much of exclusion on many things. Exclusion on really looking at whether the country is really growing, whether we are inclusive as a society, whether tolerance, as we were discussing, amounts to acceptance, whether advertising is, doing its job or is it playing out gender stereotypes, whether we grow and, do we come into this world with choice, or are we born into a religion, into a caste, into a class, into what? So a lot of that is, I think, things that were bothering me for a very, very long time. And I had written a few articles here and there on it. But there are limitations that you have when you're in the corporate world, and particularly when you're in public relations, because you keep filtering what you say. Because you have to be politically correct, you have to be appropriate, you have to speak in a certain way, you have to have a certain accent, all of those things, you just don't want to talk about certain things. You just put it under the carpet and, maybe someone will roll the carpet one day, but not me. And that's where it came from.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I loved about your book when I read it was the candor in your writing and the honesty. Like you just said, you're not trying to push anything under the carpet. You wrote about a lot of stuff. And one of the things that you did talk about in the book, which, when people talk about queer stuff, they expect us to talk about the rights, which is fair. We talk about how we are being marginalized, how we're being oppressed, all of that excluded. But in this book, you also talk a lot about love, about pleasure, about, all of that. So was that a conscious decision that you made to write about that in this book, or did it just naturally happen?
So, Sindhu, I just feel like, why should we not talk about pleasure?
Absolutely.
Why can't we talk about love? Why can't we not talk about lust? Why do we have to keep that out of the picture? How the hell did we come here? We were just not dropped onto earth from nowhere. If so, then we're aliens. And otherwise, we are products of sex.
Yeah.
And hopefully most of us are products of sex that was out of love and not out of duty or dharma. And I hope.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't anything conscious. There's very little, I would say, in this book which is conscious. As I was saying, is that things were in my head and they just kept flowing. And there are people I remembered and experiences I remembered while writing. And I said, how can I keep that out, So I do feel, I've been told that, how could you write about sex? And I've been asked, why did I write about this masseur I fell in love with in Thailand? So, obviously we all know sex work is work, Marketeers pimp products, so why don't you question them what they're selling, So there are many, many aspects to it. So I just felt we need to realize, and we come also from the subcontinent where Ayurveda is huge, right? We talk about 5 senses. We talk about the 5 elements.
Yeah.
Now, how can you ignore one of the senses? To feel, to touch, you know? And why can't we remind ourselves that that is so important to anyone?
Yeah.
It's not about being gay or being trans or queer or a woman or a man or anything. It's something so important to each one of us, and it's choice.
Karma is definitely one of the things we are all supposed to be aspiring for.
Yeah.
Like, we don't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
And if sex is taboo in this society, queer sex is all the more taboo, right?
Absolutely.
Like, they're so, like, people do not, I don't know if they're scared to know, or they're like scared about their own queer potential. They're like, if I hear about this, maybe I'll be curious.
Yeah. People are scared about being curious about something that's not within the box.
Yes.
You know, they just like, they don't want to see the light.
Yeah.
And they love darkness. I mean,
It keeps them like horses in like straight.
There's a friend of mine, it's not in this book since we're talking about it, talking about darkness. So there's this assumption that everyone has sex at night.
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, so there's a very dear friend of mine. She used to live in Gulmohar Park also in Delhi, and she's actually from Bombay, and she's married to this journalist, friend of mine as well. And so she says, what's wrong with these parents who keep thinking ki raat ko hi sex hota hai?
It'll never happen then.
She said that when the parents were away and she would come back from college or from somewhere, she was working part-time, the afternoon.
Absolutely right. That's when they
Yeah.
have the time.
That's when they're not there. No?
Yeah.
Also, they're all working and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's, you're just reducing options.
Yeah, which is why it's absolutely amazing that in this book you have spoken so much about these things, and for people to read it and just see, this is how it's meant to be. This is how you're supposed to talk about these things. It's just normal. And okay, moving on to the next thing that I wanted to ask you. In your book, there's this bit you write about queerness, right? I'll just read this out and you can explain what you meant by that. Queerness would want to free men of the tireless expectation of being a breadwinner and provider. It would wish for women to actualize themselves through what they choose. In a way, to be queer is to remove the hoods from manhood and womanhood and let honesty and integrity prevail. That was so beautiful. So what did you think when you wrote that, and can you explain?
I wish I could have attributed that to weed or something, but I was in a zone while writing that, and I think I just had black coffee. And, and so the dark truth came out. See, my idea was that why do we need to fixate, or why do we need to fix the role of a woman, the role of a man? I mean, honestly, if you did an anonymous survey across the country, and maybe other countries too, and ask men, what they really want, pose those questions, ask a woman what do they really want, and pose those questions, you'll get different answers. So I felt hoods, as in, is sort of denying. It's like creating a certain amount of opaqueness. It's denying person choice, the inability to see much more than what they've been told, like in that little tunnel vision sort of thing. So I felt that the moment we do something like that, it automatically allows queerness to exist, because the woman doesn't have to serve the man and the man doesn't have to rule over the woman. They don't have to be a patriarch or a matriarch. They don't have to be any of those things. They just have to be. And so I felt that's the beauty in nature in any case, which I talk about, because I think in the blurb we wrote also that one tree doesn't tell the other tree how to behave. And water has so many other forms. So why do we need, water can be in this glass here, it can be in a bottle, it could be raining, it could be just so many other things, a river, it could be a flood, it could be God knows what, steam. So, just let one be. And so that's where it came from. It was sort of saying the gender stereotypes is a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And you go on to write that it is to do with self-awareness and self-realization. It is about seeing oneself in others. It is what millennials call self-love. So can you talk a little bit about how queerness and self-love and about finding oneself, how it how that connects?
Well, since you read the book, it is sort of my own journey as well. So I do talk about self-awareness, self-realization. And when I connect it also with the external world, You can't deny the fact that the external world conditions you. It gets you to think in certain ways. It gets you to be scared of being different. Um, and so I had to start myself, when I was looking at all of this for a long, long time, I started realizing that, why am I perpetually just playing to what the market wants? Uh, you know, why do I have to play to what society wants? And, there's nothing really wrong with me. And why can't I just be? And obviously it comes from a very privileged position. I mean, of having a home, having a loving mother. It comes from an extended family which has grown to appreciate who I am for who I am. Uh, it comes from friends, it comes from all of these things, but it also comes from the fact that when you step back and start looking at everything, you just realize that I ought to start now caring for myself. And I think, there is something I've loved and we talked about. A lot of youngsters at this Lit Fest here. And it's very easy. It's very easy um, for senior folks or generations that have been around to dismiss the young. But one thing I saw on social media, and then also while interacting with activists, interacting with folks in the academic sphere, people who come to Pride, people, a variety of folks. There's so much to learn from them. The aspect of stating your identity for what you are, making your choices in a very, very proud, sometimes aggressive way. Yes, that's fine. That's part of it. But the whole idea of self-love, it might sound cheesy. It might sound sometimes it does get trivialized, but that happens with anything. Even love gets trivialized. But I learned a lot from them. And that's, I think, the whole thing of understanding that I'm very much part of this world. Whether people like me or not, I'm not there for them necessarily. I'm there for myself and for those who love me, and I owe it back to those who love me. And there's that. So I think it just comes from there. I don't think I have a very clear one answer to this.
That's beautifully put, though. So I think we've spoken about, what queerness is. We spoke about what it means for each person individually. Now let's look at it in a more collective sense. In a sense, you were just talking about how it comes, the privilege that some of us have, and what happens to the others who do not have that privilege. To where they can, like we talk about coming out. Coming out is not even a privilege for many people. So can you talk a little bit about the sort of rights that are important, like the anti-discriminatory rights, and they're going to talk in the courts about marriage, next month, I think. So could you talk a little? March 13th. So could you talk? Oh, hopefully it's a lucky day for us. Okay. Yes.
See, I think coming out is exceedingly important, but as Sindhu is saying, it is privileged. It's not easy. There'll be people even amongst our community who will keep insisting that others come out. It's not. Everyone doesn't have the same. See, if we respect lived experiences, if everyone, you have to respect the circumstances they're in. There isn't a correct time or a good time or a bad time to come out. You would know when you're ready.
And what if you don't want to come out ever?
And I think I think it does come down to choice, but I just feel that when you don't come out, you are denying yourself the ability to bloom freely. And because you're constantly living in a censored way. See, we exist in exactly the same spaces, right? We go to school, we go to colleges, we travel from one spot to the other. We walk on the streets, we go to, movies, we go to malls, we go to, variety of places. We go to work, we come back home, we're in a home, we meet relatives. There's the whole thing that is pretty much normal for everyone. Now, half the time, if you're going to keep stepping back and then being in this way, and I must act straight and I must this, that, someone finds out, oh my God. That fear is killing. It is killing. And I would just say that if you have that chance to come out, then do so. And I think, it is a contribution, a key contribution to your own life, but it is also to the community. Not that you owe it to the community. But I think once you come out and more people get to know that queer folks, like every other way, I mean, every other place you can find them. And they do all kinds of things. They're competent in so many other, in manners. They're doctors. I mean, Saurav's a friend, and who could be India's first gay judge. I mean, they're filmmakers, there are doctors, there are, my partner's a brilliant chef. Actors, they're just like everywhere. I'm dead sure there are politicians who haven't come out. I don't want to name them who I know.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, and there are some who are living here in the city, and so, there are just so many out there. We're everywhere. And if we don't come out, then we don't normalize certain things enough, and it's required. Mm-hmm. And honestly speaking, the first thing, it starts with yourself. Believe me, the fear of not being yourself fully. Nowadays they say authentic self. You're not being that authentic self. The amount of depression, trauma, anxiety you go through is crazy. It's just, I would never ever suggest it to someone, but I would still say, when.
Thank you for that. Leading up on from what you said, there are some people, actually at the Lit Fest, somebody came up to me yesterday and said, is there like a deadline by when I have to come out? Like, I'm so confused, like I don't know like what to pick. Like there are so many things that you could be, right? So they're confused, and she said that some other people, if she says she's queer, some people are saying that, oh, you're not really queer, you're just saying it to get attention or something. And I said, if it's cool to be queer, that's great, know? Yeah, but what do you think? Is there like a timeline?
Cool to be queer can be a hashtag.
Yeah, huh? Cool to be queer.
Hashtag cool to be queer. Yeah. And then, like everyone starts dancing around and all that stuff. Yeah. No, see, as I said, there isn't a specific time. Please, I think we need to outgrow these whole things ki is samay tak ye hona chahiye, us samay tak wo hona chahiye. This is not like a heterosexual stayed boring thing कि इतने थे कि शादी होनी चाहिए, अच्छा उसके बाद आपको खाना पकाना पड़ेगा, अच्छा ये भी झाड़ू पोछा कैसे करते हो और ठीक से नहीं करते, नीचे से करना चाहिए. You get your education, the man goes and gets education, the guy gets milk and the woman doesn't get milk. And then she gets married and then you have to procreate and all that. Come on, so there is no time, As I said, when you need to come out and when you can come out. You will feel that desperation, you'll feel that frustration, you'll feel that anger, you'll feel like, oh, damn it, I just want to now do things my way, And so you'll know it. So I think just, it's nature, it's natural. Don't try and organize it so much. Yeah. I say in this book, I think that the opposite to order is not disorder, it's diversity. So just let it be.
That's very nice. That's lovely. So another thing that I wanted to talk to you about was Section 377. So for me, growing up as a queer teenager in India, it was like a thing, right? People would say, oh my God, you're going to get arrested, you're a criminal, stuff like that. It was like something to scare you with. Yeah. So when that went away, I was not even in India, but I felt like something was lifted. So can you talk about Section 377?
Okay, so, we got so used to 377, we stopped thinking about it because we were so used to hiding, And we were so, we actually at a point, and you would also know Salim and all of them. Yeah? Salim Kidwai was no more. And so Salim was historian. He's the co-author of Same-Sex Love in India, which was part of the evidence produced in the courts on 377. He was a dear friend. It came to a point that we started enjoying the fact that we could break the law. It's like weed and hash, which are really good for health if you take it in the right measure.
Absolutely agree with you.
like it's happening in some parts of the world now. They're recognizing it because there was if you read more, you'll know it was the tobacco lobby and the caffeine lobby which sort of pushed that aside. But there's enough in our own history about it. But the thrill of doing that and having that because it's not legal, we are all products of Adam's apple sort of stories, right? Human beings. We like to break some norm. So there was a joy attached to that after a period of time to have these parties, to go to someone's house, go into someone's toilet and, do your stuff. And, I had friends who saying, Sharif, I've drunk too much so I can't drive. But actually I knew he liked someone and so wanted to use the other bedroom that was there. We had these farmhouse parties and thank God for bushes. And so we had the bushes. Then we didn't have Google Maps, so quite often we didn't know who's where, so we
You
couldn't
got
share
lost on
locations.
purpose.
On the farm, yeah. I mean, there's always a purpose behind getting lost, because that's how you find things. And so it was. There was that thrill that we sort of created for ourselves over a period of time because there was no law. But at the same time, the more devastating part of it was this law was used to enhance the social stigma against us. And activists would know, because I'm not, I just want to clarify, I never rolled up my sleeves. I'm a beneficiary of the work that has been done by so many people along the way. There were activists who couldn't run programs on ground to educate people on safe sex. And they were being picked up without the act of sex in any case. So you had that. You had people across the country, it wasn't recorded sufficiently, being beaten up brutally. Sometimes by families, sometimes by the police. And if you think that all of that has changed, no. There has still been parents trying to interfere with the rights of children, even though 377 is gone. So just imagine when 377 was there. At least now, you can move the courts, as has happened with lesbian couples in Allahabad, it's happened in Kerala. You've had these cases where people have been able to turn to the courts and say, I'm an adult and I have every bloody right to make my choice and to who I want to live with. So, but that wasn't there for, you couldn't even think of moving the courts when you're a criminal, considered to be a criminal. Although being gay wasn't being a crime. It was the act of sex which was a crime. But the press, cinema, law enforcers, political spectrum, educationists, doctors, all participated in making us criminals. All of them. And honestly, when people tell me to respect elders, I do for what they do, but I don't respect them to the extent that they can be so discriminatory even today. If they are like that, I have no respect. I have no respect for age. As I was telling someone, if you to respect age, it should be wine and single malt.
So, yes, go for it. So, what you just said about how, it's like how the society criminalizes you, right? Like they're all ganging up together in a sense and doing this. So could you also talk about, now that Section 377's gone away, how can, I'm sure there are many allies here among us, right? So how can we make this society more inclusive, right? And it's a safe sort of space for everybody to just thrive and be who they are?
I think one is festivals like this. And I'm not saying it because we're here. I think every story brings a change. And empathy as such, no one can be 100% empathetic because you really can't be in someone else's shoes. Don't go with this corporate language today, we've got a purpose, we're going to change the world. Darling, you don't allow half of the people to get a job, so let's not, the entry points are so difficult for so many people. So let's not get into that. They say purpose and we're empathetic and we care and all that stuff. But they don't. They care for bottom line. So, I mean, there are exceptions, but stories, extremely important. I think education, the education system, you were talking about anti-discrimination. The focus, same-sex marriage is important, I'm not denying it. I think people who want that should get it and should not be denied that choice. But really speaking, in today's world, when it comes to love, when it comes to these choices that you want to make, you need to feel safe at home. So parenting needs to be addressed very, very seriously. You need to be safe in the school. Schools need to be addressed in the education system there. And teachers need to understand, the boards that prescribe all this education and books and all. We've had a controversy recently with a person out of Delhi who was dropped from the board, and the report created, which was to be trans-inclusive, was dropped. It became controversial, but we haven't yet seen the outcome of that controversy, that is a positive outcome as yet. Cinema, again influential. We've been caricatures for the longest time. There isn't enough of a queer lens on society itself, but on stories of our lives. The influence. If we're a butt of all jokes, which has been for the longest time, then we remain to be butt of all jokes in general society that we engage with, right? It's like what is changing, but what was there earlier, that almost every commercial film has always portrayed the man as a hero, like the woman as zero, running around the man. And we recreate that and we just keep playing this back to like a big echo chamber. Cinema has to change, and that's some of the changes coming through OTT, It is coming with the woman's lens behind the camera, or the woman who's writing the story, It is coming. You're seeing the role of woman change. She's not being portrayed only as a Devi or some god, or just as mother, and she's being allowed to be, right? So we need to see that also happen when it comes to LGBTQIA+. You need policy from governments, We need media. Where is the queer representation sufficiently in the press? I mean, women are also not represented sufficiently. We need intersections on caste to be addressed, I talk about in this book, of 121 key positions in the press, 116 are upper caste. Okay, when you have 80% of our population, which is SC, ST, OBC, isn't that skewed to one sort of thinking? And one experience of life. So these are all of these spaces that influence society need to be addressed in the same way.
Absolutely. Do we have more time? Or yeah, okay, great. So it's great that you brought up that thing about intersectionality, right? Because even within the queer movement, this often comes up about how it is not as inclusive as we expect it should be. So how do you think we can fix that, honestly? Because especially because, like we're saying, like these festivals or things like that, people try to be as inclusive as they can, but they're not really, I mean, it comes to, at the end of the day, we're speaking in English right now. How many people can,
See, I think I talk about elitism in our country. I talk about also elitism in terms of the press. I talk about neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is all about the market. So if we don't sell, we have no market. If you don't have money, you have no to influence. So it's not an inclusive market. So let's get that very clear. I've been asked earlier on, even when Straight to Normal came out, there are other people who I think perhaps write 100 times better than I do, who have more telling stories to share, and they won't get published because exactly what you said. English is one. Two is being a former journalist, a former corporate sort of fellow, I'll get in. Now, the question of privilege that comes up within the community as well is how much are we taking for ourselves and how much are we sharing?
And how are we sharing?
And how are we sharing?
Yeah.
So, we can't live entirely, and there'll always be choice that we live that, oh, I earned it, and I did this, and I worked for it, and the I has to have space for we. Because otherwise, this whole idea of I consume, I this, I that, has consumed natural resources also, and we have climate change problems and all that because of this I, that I can consume, I earn, I this, I don't share. And I don't have any right, I don't need to share because I earned that money. So that has to change even within the community. And we need to realize that when you look at the Stonewall riots, and I say that in the book, it's not to pin all the responsibility on the ones who are marginalized to the most. But the movement started with trans folks who oppressed the most, I'd say. Black, trans, oppressed double times the minority. That doesn't mean the Dalits have to do it, or the lower caste, or the most disabled, or people like that have to be the answer. I'm just saying is we have to recognize the fact that when we have privilege, we need to see how we use it. In which way. And I think this book also comes from a certain amount of guilt of not knowing enough as I grew up. Okay? But it also, what I've tried to do is through the Rainbow Lit Fest, is to make it queer and inclusive. So we have no problems with heterosexuals. They may have their problems, and we may be able to help them.
Open up a little bit more.
Yeah, loosen up a little bit. Yeah. Whole lot of shaking going on.
Yes.
Jerry Lee Lewis. Yeah, and and have more and more conversations at the Lit Fest. After Devdutt, this is the last physical one. After Devdutt spoke and Shubha Mudigal spoke, and we looked at music and classical music also and its inclusivity and how trans folks used to sing, the rise of women taking over what was considered male ragas, and all of that we went into. And Devdutt obviously talked about mythology and history and several aspects that have existed in terms of queerness. But the first panel discussion was with sex workers. Sex workers who were heterosexual as well as trans. And what I want to do, which is why I'm so uncomfortable with being also photographed, and I don't like to keep putting myself in front on things. The idea was to sit back and bring as many people together to have these conversations so that we start opening minds. And I found, and I got to know from people in the audience and from some other panelists, there were some senior citizens who had come first, started with ye sab ganda hai, ye sab wo hai, and there were others also who made such comments and all. But there were quite a few of them who said, I want to come back in the evening and I want to come back the next day. Yeah. And if that little contribution, tiny, if we can sort of keep multiplying it.
I'm so glad you're doing this, the Rainbow Lit Fest in Delhi. It sounds absolutely amazing. I hope it has a long run.
I hope so too, yeah.
So now we have a little bit more time, or we'll take questions. Sorry? 5 minutes more? Okay, I'll come to you first after I ask him this question, which is my last question. Not yet.
This is the one with the most light.
Yeah, yeah. This is actually. Let's take audience questions because they are very curious, I think. Okay, let's start with you.
Some are bi-curious.
No. That's not what I said. They have to say that.
Hi, it was a wonderful session, and I might have a question that slightly deviates from this, and that is talking about queerness. And I think it comes from a lot of friends that I have and myself as well, that we are, I often feel like I'm too queer to be heterosexual, but not queer enough to be on the other side, you know? It's like a bunch of us just hanging in the middle who might be straight, but not really. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to explain. And as a psychotherapist also, I have a lot of clients who talk about feeling pressured, I'm so sorry, feel pressured, yeah, thank you so much. Who feel pressured to kind of seem more queer than they are. So there's like a whole conversation that I think doesn't happen of, I think, us who are queer, not queer enough. I don't know where we exist. So what are your thoughts on that?
See, I say something in the book, there is nothing definitive. So at the moment you keep putting yourself into this is more queer than that, or this is queer and this is not, and this is more straight than that, or whatever, you're trying to define it. Okay, and I think there is fluidity. And the lovely thing about life is fluidity. Because fluidity allows you to choose. You don't have to be any specific thing. It's not easy because we've always had these sort of definitions and boxes on what is heterosexual, what is it to be a woman, what is it to be a man, what is it to be a child, what is it to be a grandmother, a mother, a mother-in-law, and a daughter-in-law. What is it to be Ekta Kapoor? And, sorry. So you have all of those sort of defined things. The greatness in queerness and the greatness in curiosity is, it just changes. So, we will all come to a point where we won't seek that much change because as human beings, I think we can't handle it. We don't have that much strength. We like some sort of thing. You'll know, when you're done with the exploration, because you'll know where your comfort is. It's like so many people were like having exotic food for a long time, and then suddenly when COVID happened, they realized the comfort was dal chawal. They had to wait for COVID to tell them that, So you can find out much before a lot of things. So I don't think you should stop yourself from exploring or anyone else stop them from exploring. I think what they need to be clear is when they explore, are they safe? Who are they exploring it with? Are they taking all the cautions that they need to? Health, those kind of things. That is, to me, far more important than whether they should or should not. And I'll give you an example in my own office years ago, because I started what was called Friday open houses. And we used to have all kinds of conversations because I just felt initially that particularly in Delhi, most of the women didn't speak. Okay? They were all quiet. And I also felt that we weren't thinking enough for our clients and what we do. We're not aware. We're just stuck in a small little zone. 2009 happened, the Delhi High Court order decriminalizing homosexuality. And there were discussions around it, etc. in the Friday organs. I was a little guarded. But then one girl, and we started having a lot of other conversations. One girl comes, and she was married, and she says, Sharif, says, what? I think I want to explore. I've been attracted to women. So I said, oh, that's nice. So she says, should I? So I said, listen, I can't tell you whether you should. I said, you know your life better than I do. And you're married, you have a child. I said, you have to take that call. Can you keep something a secret? What is the future of what you're trying to do? How much is that desire within you? I said, you decide for yourself. I would not say no, but I would not say yes either.
Are you monogamous or polyamorous?
Yeah. Okay, we didn't have that language in 2009-10. Yeah, we just didn't have. We didn't even have Vikas and Atmanirbharta being used that often. We had masturbation, and we thought that was progress. So, yeah, so it was like that. So I think you have to give a little space to people to do that exploration. It's not easy. It's really not easy. I made it sound very easy. Did I? Okay.
Thank you. Let's take one more.
All of us sitting here acknowledge that we are very privileged and sitting in air-conditioned rooms to even talk about it. But like I have a friend, and like coming out for him is equivalent of being killed. Like she is from a traditional Muslim household. So like, what should be the practical call to action that you would give to her? Like, because there are many people in India who simply cannot come out. Like that's the thing. It's equivalent of being killed or banished from the household, and an 18-year-old could not take their own expense. Like they're dependent on their family. You could fight the world, but at the end of the day you have to stay with your family, right? So, and it's not like they simply cannot communicate, because the other party even should be able to listen to their facts and stuff. So what do you think would be an appropriate call to action?
See, I think we're going back to that question, and I want to answer it with two parts to it. I think we were talking about anti-discrimination laws. So, and I didn't complete that answer. I think I just lost my thought at that moment. If we can't fortify the lives of people, finding love is just so damn important. So damn difficult, right? To have a partner, have a sustainable relationship, because you need economics also to make that happen. And the focus right now in this country and the press is same-sex marriage. We're ignoring the fact exactly what you talked about right now, but talking about not only that, even people in privileged homes. I have a friend who lives in one of the richest parts of Delhi, Sundarnagar. He can't have his a gay friend sit at the same dining table. His mother doesn't allow it. Okay. That may seem, that is small compared to what you were talking about. But if we can't make a child safe in a school and a college, if they don't have access to healthcare, if they don't have access to law, they don't have access to economics and jobs, and they're not safe in a job, then where the choice of love and relationships are very impossible. But now back to your point in this, and the question that you're raising is, at the end of the day, I think while someone knows when they can or cannot come out, to fortify your basic life, your education and your job, you might have to suffer family. That's why I said blood is not necessarily thicker than water. Anyway, too thick blood, you're going to have a heart problem. And water's taking over the world anyway. So, we've seen with global warming and all, pani to aa hi raha hai, reason. So, blood is not thicker than water. Always. Getting a job, being secure, having those things, not easy again in our country, or maybe other parts of the world, that gives you some sort of economic independence. It gives you perhaps a chance to go and share a room somewhere. It gives you a chance to have a room on your own. It creates your own space, because you're not going to otherwise have that space. And I don't think it has anything to do per se with religion alone. It's about culture also. And that's the only way, I think, a tough way, but it's the only way that I think some people can get away. I say in this book that in the heterosexual world, there are a lot of people who leave their homes, okay, to send money back. But in the case of a lot of queer folks, it's to have a life. It's not about necessarily sending money back. They may be doing that too, but it's to have their own space, because the space is not safe. So we need laws to address inheritance, all of those things. And unfortunately, we just seem to focus only on same-sex marriage, Like everyone has love and all that. I mean, I say it is how we celebrate the GDP. How many people are part of that economy? 90% are not part of it, but we celebrate it on page 1. Like, सब कुछ हो गया यार 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 क्या बात है यार. Everyone's got money and all that stuff. अरे यार.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay, last question.
My question would be on similar lines, right at the end here. Fear of getting labeled, fear of getting judged, it also causes sometimes, and people have been through suicidal thoughts. There is a mind, there is a body, there is a conflict with mind and body. Somebody wants to get into it and cannot get into it. And that really causes pain and takes you out of what you are and takes you away from a normal human being. Article 377 has been recently abolished. It's a very new thing for...
Section. It's part of the penal code.
Section.
Article will be constitution.
Sorry.
We'll wait for that also.
Section 377.
One day.
So just a straight question. Is there a rehabilitation system to jump on one side of the line?
Sorry?
Is there a rehabilitation system to jump on one side of the line?
Listen, is there any other question that we can just put the two together and then try? There was someone who was asking, someone who was holding onto the door was asking.
Good afternoon, sir. Yesterday, as I was attending Sindhu's lecture, she said that everyone has a queer potential. You might be unaware of it. I was struck by it because, as per human anatomy, males are blessed with prostate and females are blessed with clitoris. What are your thoughts on this statement that everyone can have or must have a queer potential?
Okay. Someone else was okay there. जल्दी से फिर कोशिश करूँगा कि संक्षेप
Hello, sir.
में
I was talking to my friend about LGBTQ inclusion. Then he asked me, why are you not open to the idea that I am not open to your idea? So why can't we coexist peacefully with our differences?
Can I read from the book quickly? No, because he just read from the phone. So I'll also. मैं भी पढ़ा लिखा हूँ यार. थोड़ा कुछ. But I'm telling you, failure is fabulous. I failed twice in school. Okay? I didn't get my honors degree because I couldn't pass my Hindi subsidiary. Don't ask why they wanted me to do the Hindi subsidiary when I was studying English. And so there's nothing. Dylan said there's no success like failure. Bob Dylan. So I talk about this, I think your question about all the sort of questions that I've come across. I think the issue of fear we've already addressed earlier. But I say that through my journey in life and experiences with love, family, politics, media, religions, cultures, nations, and people, queering is a process. It is a constant effort to retain one's sense of self. And since freedom and queerness aren't absolute or constant, nor is any norm, as that defies nature's greatness to change, to have different seasons that are normal to some and not normal to all. What I see and leave you with is not this book, not just this book. It is the thought that the opposite of order isn't disorder, it is diversity. And if you can include this thought in your consciousness, we'd all stand a chance to partake and share this beautiful world, its nature and our ability to give and receive love. The world, after all, is queer if you have enough curiosity to see it that way. I think that answered both the questions.
Effectively so.
Thank
That
God
was
I
so
still
beautiful.
remember what I wrote. So difficult.
No, thank you so much, Sharif. That was a beautiful session, and what you finished it off with like cherry on the top, So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And you can reach out whenever you want to. And if I can, I will reply.
He will be around after if anybody has
for a
more
good while.
questions or anything like that.
So it's going to be around after the session as well, and I encourage all of you to please purchase his book so that you can get it signed, and that will be an everlasting memory. We thank you for an amazing session, sir and ma'am. And so just before you leave, as to show our gratitude for this session, for coming here to Nagpur, we have a customized painting made for you by Bhairgavi Chorgade, and member of the Alagangan community. I invite her on stage, please. Bhargavi, I'm so sorry.
The Hawkeye. Oh, how nice.
She's made this painting especially for you. She was briefed about your book, and that's what she came up with. It's brilliant, Bhargavi.
Okay, so you know, the Lit Fest is coming back this year. And Sindhu and I were chatting, my house is just being rebuilt. And so on the terrace, we're creating half the space for, small size events which can accommodate 40, 50 people. And we're trying to make it sort of, I don't want to use the word inclusive, we're just trying to make it a little vibrant, colorful, I, me, I, and all of that. This will definitely go up there.
Wow.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Lovely. Thank you. I just want to say one more thing. 377 was a Victorian law, and the Queen didn't knight me. So just call me by my name, as that movie says. Thank you.
Duly noted. Has to be an amazing moment. So why are we not all clapping?